What's up, YouTube? I'm back with a new video. There was a little bit of a downtime because I was picking up a new puppy. My girlfriend is getting a Doberman puppy, so we had to pick that one up. But now I'm back and with a little bit of a different video. For those of you that follow my main channel, you already know this format. It is what I usually use for the Try Hard Thursdays, or what I used to use for the Try Hard Thursdays. Now I'm gonna use it because there were some special games here. This is tournament gameplay. I recorded my first person view and I'm gonna point you guys, I'm gonna lead you guys through my thought process, whatever I was thinking during the time of this recording and during the time of those games. And then I'll also talk a little bit about the mistakes. It's also gonna be interesting for me to see what mistakes I make during these games. Maybe I can learn a thing or two as well myself while I'm doing this. My opponent in this case was Spirit. This is from the ESL Open Cup. I don't know which number, but it's the Monday weekly cup. I usually really dislike playing them, but I do anyways because there's points in them. So in this case, I'm not gonna spoil the results yet, but this is the quarterfinal match against Spirit. Since usually whenever I let her, I don't really get that many Terrans, I figured this might be a nice way to do it. So I'll commentate through the first 3 games we played pretty much, or well, throughout the best of 3. And we'll talk a little bit about it. I went for the most standard, most common opener. I called this the Advanced Clash opener, where you try to take your 3rd hatchery before the Reaper arrives. That's what the purpose of the Clash opener was, taking the 3rd hatch before the Overlord and before the Reaper arrives. Now this is just the most economic variation of any of the openers. You take your hatch after you make the Overlord at 28, so you're getting purposefully supply block at 28 to take your 3rd hatchery, then you make the drones, you delay your speed a little bit. Everybody, I think, should know this opener if you're struggling against multi-Rex Reaper openings, against 3-Rex Reaper in particular. You should probably try to get speed right away. That's really the only weakness of this build, is 3-Rex Reaper. You will lose your 3rd base against it. Against 3-Rex Reaper, it's actually pretty good, because your 3rd base is so fast that they usually can't cancel it. And 2-Rex Reaper usually is also just 3 Reapers, so in that case you don't really have an issue. Even without the link speed, you can defend it just with Queens. So here we are on the map. I think it's called Alcyone. Fun fact is that Spirit actually picks this because it sounds funny to him. He picked this as a loser's pick in the World Team League because he likes the name of the map. Now, I thought this was a decent map for Zerg, so I was very surprised that out of all the 9 maps, he picked this one in the World Team League match against Raynor. And then he almost won, but he kind of threw it against Raynor. So I was like, oh, maybe the map is decent after all. But he also didn't veto it against me. I think usually in a best of 9 this will get vetoed. I think it's a pretty decent Zerg map. He even picked this. Once again, you can expand into 2 different directions, which is usually very good for Zerg. And yeah, there's no insane tank pushes, like especially if you take the 4th base behind the minerals, which is what I'm gonna do in this game and what I will usually do on this map. It's gonna be very difficult to tank push there. There's a couple of things that make a map a Terran map. One is the rush distance, then 2 is tank positioning at or in front of potential 4th base locations. Tank push positionings in general. Then the amount of counterattack paths and how fast they are is usually something that makes a map good for Zerg. In this case, I barely missed a transfuse, by the way. But so far, not much has happened. We scouted that was 3cc. We saw the Viking. So when it was 3cc Viking. Could be a Liberator afterwards. Could be just fast double medevac drop, fast stim. Those are kind of the options. And then there's another option where they go for a Hellbat drop and then they run by the Hellions. It's usually a 2cc build, but you can also do this with 3cc. You can also go 3cc Viking into Marauder Hellbat. All of these are viable build orders. You can even go Viking into the very late Banshees or Battle Cruisers. Well, 3cc Viking into Battle Cruiser is relatively common. 3cc Viking into Banshees not as much. Because usually the cloak, the 2 Banshees will show up so late with the cloak that even if you lose some workers, even if you're unprepared, it's not that great, and usually you just make a sport anyways against Viking openers. In this game, we're going for Lingbane Muta as a compositional choice. I think there's a pretty decent Muta map, because you can basically, whenever your opponent goes for a committed attack, which is what Muta is bad against, you can go for a massive counter attack and just give up bases, expand somewhere else. That's usually what makes a map a good Muta map. So in this case, I had 4 queens in the main and 4 at the third, in case of a BC follow-up. You don't ever need to actually scout exactly what your opponent is doing. You just need to make sure that you're ready for everything with your normal opener. Because against Terran, you can hold everything with just queens. So if I play the same opener and then I just have all my queens at the front, defending the creep spread, and then a BC teleports in, I'm dead, obviously. But since I know BC is... there's a chance of a battle cruiser here, I went to the main base at the timing of which the BC would show up with 4 queens. And now I'm going back to spraying creep with them. In all directions, preferably. One thing that I've noticed when I play Muta is that I tend to float larva a little bit too early for the Mutas, because you want to spend all your money into Mutas, but whenever a hatchery has 3 larvae or more, it won't produce larvae by itself anymore, so you're actively losing larvae. So I started making more Zerglings while I was waiting for my Mutas, and I think that made my 3-base Muta build quite a bit better. Now I see him attacking. I didn't quite catch if there's tanks or not yet, but now that I know there are tanks, that's pretty good for me, because quick Muta is actually very good against these very fast tank timings. Lingna Muta is very bad against the late tank timings, where they wait for a bigger army, but now that he went with the first tank, with the first 2 tanks right away, that's pretty bad for him, because usually you can kill his army, and sometimes you can even catch them at attack. So in this case we got the 2 tanks, he lifts up super fast, that's why he kind of leaves the tanks by themselves. The moment he sees the Mutas, if he commits to the fight with the Marines, he will never get out with anything, and he will most likely lose everything. So that was actually the correct call by him, and we set on a pretty low drone count to make that happen, so I think the game overall is relatively even, with a slight lead for us, because losing the 2 tanks is not necessary. If he did a better job of scouting or feeling out that there's a chance of Muta, he should have kept the tanks at home. Could have went at a lighter timing with 1-1 already, and 4 medevacs, and that's usually better against Mutas. So now that we won the fight, we obviously continue to spread creep. One thing that I will always do after I defend the first attack is I put all the Mutas that I have, as many Mutas as possible, into one of the Muta control groups, and then try to stay on the other side of the map with them, try to harass. And at the same time, I'll fully drone up. Like if you actually win the fight, you can fully drone up to 88 workers, 4 base economy, keep expanding, and not make Mutas for a while. And then whenever you do start to make Mutas again, I hotkey them with my ground army, actually. So none of my reinforcing Mutas will die to his reinforcements. Like his reinforcements just die to my Mutas right there. This is obviously enough Mutas to one-shot the Widow Mine, so I can go for it. 10 Mutas is enough. And that's why you see some Mutas in my main army control group. Now that I see he's not reinforcing it anymore, I know, okay, I can potentially take this fight, but we're playing it very safe. We just don't want to lose anything for free. Right now, we're definitely outmining him. I see that he doesn't have the right side 4th base. He can have the left side 4th base. I really doubt he's 88 workers mining right now already. So I feel pretty comfortable just doing nothing, even though we're not gaining back this position, and thus we're losing creep spread momentum towards the bottom side. I don't think that's that bad. Like whenever he tries to push on the bottom, I feel like that's good for me, because the distance is just very big on this map. So now we kill his exposed depot, really just going for very non-committal stuff with our Mutas. And trying to keep our drones alive at this point. Just like once all of those mines are activated, we can definitely crush this. At this point is what I was thinking, because he just didn't reinforce it for such a long time. So now I should actually try to look for a fight. So we're going forward here with the Zerglings, trying to activate most of the mines. Now I tried to tank one with the Overseer. Sadly, it died right on top of my Mutas, so I could not actually manage to avoid the splash damage here, and we clean everything up. He loses a lot of units, we lose a lot of units, but we're outmining him for sure. That's the one thing that I was certain about. We make even a couple more drones towards the 5th base. And at this point, we're just trying to trade effectively. That's the whole spiel here. There's not much more to it. This is not a huge marine count, but once again, the Widow Mines are strong. They also now unburrow faster for I don't know what reason, but they do unburrow faster now, so that's very cool. Shout out to Clam for that. Because I'm sure that he's the biggest beneficiary of this. So yeah, I'm just trying to clean up the Widow Mines, and you can see that I'm very passive. I am pretty sure I could have engaged at the bottom earlier. I'm pretty sure I could have engaged at the top earlier, but I just don't want to take any bad fights. I just wanted to trade somewhat effectively because I felt like, okay, I'm outmining you. As long as I'm trading somewhat decently, I should be fine. Here comes my counterattack with the Mutas. Now I split up my ground forces because they're big enough to split up. If he has his entire army on my side, I could not actually split them up. I would need to sacrifice one base, but at the same time, then my Mutas would deal counter damage. We find some exposed... well, we find his main base completely exposed, to be honest. So we're trying to kill some of the reactors, kill some mines, whatever he gives us for free we take. The upgrades for the Mutas, usually I go +1 flyer, and then sometimes I queue up +1 carapace, flyer carapace, or whatever you want to call it. And then I go back to +2, that way you never lose timing on the upgrades. And sometimes if I'm really feeling it, I'm gonna go attack only. And against mech, obviously, you usually go attack only as well. You do end up getting 1 carapace, which matters especially for Thor against Broodlord. I think it's 1 extra shot when the Thors have +3, compared to when they fight against Thors with 0 carapace. But after that, the carapace is pretty useless against mech. Against Bio, it's very powerful though. Like the carapace, obviously you know the ground carapace matters more than the ground attack. That is simply because of the attack speed of Marines. So in all the direct engagements, the carapace actually matters quite a bit. Now we try to break these rocks to make it easier for us to rotate. You will notice that at this point in the game, I'm not really spreading creep that much. That is because I'm occupied with other things. Like I spent more attention on my main army, and this is not because I don't want to spread creep. It's just that I'm not fast enough to do so, and neither is any Zerg in the world. Usually in the moment the action starts happening, like the very big action that is actually game deciding, very often the Zergs stop spreading creep as much. Now we found us exposed natural, at the same time we're still trying to defend our bases. As long as we have 4 bases alive, we're still mining decently, but at this point it's getting kind of tricky without a 5th base. Now our opponent is also only on 4 base, and now he just lost his natural, so we should still be out mining him. We also got a hive to continue our upgrades, and an ultra cavern. But yeah, I basically want to stay 1 base ahead with the Mutas. Usually with Mutas you can actually trade quite effectively. Like with Hydra Bane, you're supposed to be behind. In resources lost, that was a rough mine hit, but with Mutas, because of the harassment option, you can actually trade pretty effectively. The only thing that is not effective is the defensive trades. So if your opponent is completely set up, you won't have good trades, but on the other side of the map is where the trades should be really good always, so that's kind of the case here as well. Muta's getting work done there. Now I know, okay, he has a lot of units at home again, so it's very similar to the first cleanup that we had at the bottom. I'm thinking to myself, okay, now is the time to go. So we're sending some units forward, trying to make all of the Widow Mines blow up before our main force engages into him. And now he, yeah, I mean, he just didn't have enough units there. So we managed to win that fight. He still escaped with a decent amount of units. I think I could have done a better job focus firing the medevacs there. Once again, I haven't spread creep for a long time, because I'm just constantly chasing his army around and trying to think about where I can make stuff happen with the Mutas. I try to attack wherever I see a hole. I could see that I had drones not mining there correctly. Ghosts actually are... The biggest nerf of the ghost is actually the static targeting, that you can run away. The biggest part of that nerf is actually against Mutas. You can run away always with Mutas now if you pay attention to them. So here I saw, okay, this was a lot of Widow Mines without a lot to back them up, so I felt free to just run forward a couple of units to set all of them off. Now that they were all on cooldown, we could engage once again. That's kind of a theme in general against Widow Mines. Either you go for the straight up engagement and hope that you micro like a god, or hope that the Widow Mines are kind to you and just don't hit the clumps of units that you have, or you try to set them off before the fight. It's kind of the 2 things you can do. Now I realized, okay, I took a good fight there. I'm out of mining, but my opponent was outmined beforehand, so our army at this point should be bigger than his. We don't really have that much Mutaforce anymore, so our main army advantage now is in the Ultras, so we try to blow up the Planetary. That's his last mining base, and we managed to barely do so. It was actually a very close fight, and now we just escape with the Ultras. There's no reason for us to stick around here anymore. We now are floating a little bit of gas instead of making Mutas. I believe the best course of action at this point is to make a couple of extra infestors now that we have the Ultras, so that's what I'm probably doing. Adding a couple more Mutas. You always want to have enough Mutas to at least one-shot the Widow Mines.
Swarm forces under attack.
And yeah. Now our opponent has to attack us again, right? So we're just setting up for a defensive trade. Now I'm focusing a little bit more on the creep spread again, since there's nothing else happening. I'm once again in the process of just defending. I think I'm ahead, so I had in mining, that is, so I think to myself, okay, all I need to do is survive, getting up a couple of Vipers, getting up a couple of Infestors. Those should enable me to continuously trade okay enough to close out this game. Now we're counterattacking with a little bit of Ling. We can see, okay, there's not actually a lot of Marines here, so we go for the fight. Decent fungal there on a lot of Marauders and the Widow Mine. We get most of those for free, only one snipe goes off. The Widow Mines were not quite borrowed in time, so we're trying to be as annoying as possible on his side of the map at the same time. So he has to spend attention somewhere else. Attention is also a very important resource in StarCraft. Doing those small run-bys. Basically, whenever you're on the offense, you need to spend less resources or less attention than the defender. That's a general theme for StarCraft, so you always want to be doing something on the other side of the map. It will always help in these situations. As you can see, he's just rallying his Marauders and his Marines into my Mutas, and the Mutas are getting insane damage done without me even really microing them, because he just wasn't prepared for them. At this point, his Medivacs are dying to the parasitic bombs. With the Vipers, I see, okay, he still doesn't have a base here, so we're still out mining him. Remember, this was his 4th base, and he never took another base besides this one. So it is GG, and we take the first match. Alright, so game 2 was on hard lead, which I think is quite a bit harder of a map against Terran. It's a relatively short map. Now you can once again expand into 2 different directions, but the watchtowers usually favor Terran significantly. In the early game they can deny Zergling vision there with Hellions, and later on, I mean with Medivac drops and also still with Hellions. It's just very difficult to take control of those watchtowers. It's very difficult thus to control these sprites of the map, because your opponent will always have quick notice before he needs to pick up, or you know he will see your units incoming. He can basically micro them, set up the way he wants to, know always if he wants to engage. So it's kind of hard to fight on the outskirts of the map, but 2 of those bases, if you want to fight for them, are on the outskirts of the map, so only really the first 5 bases are somewhat okay to take. And realistically, it's I mean, only the linear base really is okay to take. I think it's pretty important here to expand forward. Otherwise, it is incredibly difficult to play this map in the long run, because this map will just feel so closed off by the Terran once they take control of the watchtowers, and having the forward location and having more forward crew spread will enable you to hold these positions a little bit better. Also take the forward back bases as a safer forward base. I think makes it easier as well against the initial tank timing. So overall, I think this is one of the harder maps against Terran, but I think there's a couple of hard maps against Terran, so that's why I didn't veto it. I probably must have picked Alkione then, because I can't imagine myself picking this map, to be honest. Either way, if you're getting blocked by an SCV, make sure to run out with 2 drones right away and then take the 3rd edge before the Reaper arrives. It's a pretty neat move, and there's nothing he can do about it. If they patrol the SCV like this, you need to send 2. If he sits on one of the bases, you can just take the other one. And that's fairly easy. So whenever they do this, I do take my 3rd edge before I make the Overlord. It's kind of important. Now he actually is hunting for my Overlord here, which is pretty annoying. He went for 1 Marine, not a 2nd Marine, otherwise that one would have already been in my main, so we're trying to just save that Overlord. Towards the side of the map, it's going to make scouting later on impossible with the Overlords. But one thing that you can do then is scout with the Zergling run-bys, or try to scout at least. With Zergling run-bys, once again we're opening very similar to last game. Try to protect our Cryptomer here, together with the Zerglings. If you have 4 Zerglings that are full HP against a Reaper that didn't use his grenade yet, and you micro them correctly, like you force the Reaper away a little bit, then you have the Zerglings in front of the Queen, you can usually put the Cryptomer down almost at the very edge of the creep and still defend it. In this case, if it's like a secondary creep tumor, you can obviously stand a little bit in front of the tumor. With a Queen plus the 4 links, makes it quite easy to put them at the very edge of creep. The extra creep tumors. So yeah, we don't know much yet, besides that there is no Hellions. From a 2cc opener, Hellions would have already arrived. So now we're sending Zerglings around to scout for proxies, just potential proxies, as well as trying to clear the towers. Now we see the first Hellions arriving there. Oh no, it's actually just a Reaper. So one of the things that it could be right now is it could just be a multi-marine build. Let's say it's 3cc 211 without any Hellions. It's one of the options. Another option would be a weird 3 Rex. It would be really weak though. If you go for Reaper Marine into 3 Rex, it's not really a build on high level. But if you see this in your games, you don't really need to respect it that much. I'm pretty sure you can hold that with a ton of drones and just Queenling. Because it just delays the marine production so much if you open with a Reaper and then a marine. So now we see the lack of extra depots at the front, so we know it's a 3cc opener. He made at least 4 Hellions. We see something flying into our main base. It is a Medevac. So we go there with the Hellions. I was suspecting a Hellion drop instead of it is just a Widowmine drop. We're trying to trade against those Widowmines with the 1 Zergling or 1 drone at a time. He kills a drone and 1 Zergling here. It's not that difficult to hold Widowmine drops, honestly, as a Zerg. But as I'm saying that, I misclicked all my drones away from my main base, so I'm losing a lot of mining time there, which makes this already worth it for him. Especially considering the Medevac is still alive. And it takes attention away from us, so that's creep spread denial, indirect creep spread denial for the Terran. Now dropping towards our natural. Takes a while to burrow. It's important to always have something there to attack it, otherwise you can consistently unroll and burrow if you just have drones there. Now, we're not Protoss, so we automatically have units there usually. Even just 1 queen will force it to burrow quite quickly. And once again, now he's just trying to be annoying with the Liberator and the Medevac, which he's doing a great job of. While we're going for double Evo chamber, I think I forgot my baiting nest here if I'm not incorrect. Yeah, I don't think I have my baiting nest, which is pretty stupid considering I went for an early lair for early baiting speed. Also, our fort base is a little bit late, so yeah, I think this early game went pretty well for our opponent. All things considered, we didn't really lose a lot of units, but our macro was not perfect because of the multitask of our opponent, so we made a lot of mistakes here, which led to us floating a little bit of money, delaying our forward base. Now I'm also taking a 5th, and I will also take a macro hatch at the same time. This is actually not just because of macro mistakes, but rather because this is how I play the Ling Bane style. So we're staying on 4 gas only, and we're gonna try to play with an insane amount of Ling Bane instead of tacking up and adding Hydras or Mutas or any of that stuff. Usually there's 4 good playstyles with Ling Bane. One is Hydra Ling Bane. Starts with 5 gas, and there's Muta Ling Bane, which starts with 6 gas, and there's Pure Ling Bane, which starts with 4 gas, and then there's Ling Bane into Very Quick Hive, which also starts with 5 gas. Those are the main Baneling styles right now that we have. And these gas counts are gas counts that you are at for the first for the first push. Like for if there's a tank push, usually with Pure Ling Bane, you're only on 4 gas and then 4 mineral lines saturated. So that is 64 plus 12. So that's 76 drones. With Hydra Bane is 79. And with Mutaling Bane, honestly, you're staying on a much lower worker count. You don't drone up all the mineral lines because you can't afford to. Mutas are much worse in direct engagement, so usually if you go Quid Muta, you stay on a lower worker count. So now we're trying to go for a Baneling run by. Let's see if he's paying attention. We got 2 depots, we got a decent amount of SCVs, and we try to hold position him. The last Baneling over there for in order to be extra annoying. Now, as I said, this is the 74 worker count, 76 worker count, sorry. Ling Bane style, where I'm also getting an extra macro hatch. So now we have a lot of units. That is usually enough to destroy any push that is coming. Or, with the extra units, you can also try to counterattack. Now, this is not a position, as I said before, where I think it's good to engage into, because there is a watchtower. So instead I'm using the big army advantage that we have to counterattack. Because I'm pretty sure that with this style, as long as you have all the queens at the front and you have some Banelings pre-morph, you cannot really die at your side of the map. So instead I'm going for a massive counterattack. Now if I see him return home with a lot of his units, I would engage at the same time. But since he's clearing it up with just reinforcements, I'm not engaging yet. It can happen very frequently that if you go for one of these big counterattacks, the opponent F2s back home immediately. The moment you realize that happening, you should try to attack wherever his initial push was, because very often the tanks are super exposed and just left behind to die. Because Terrans use F2 by far the most out of all the races, since it's the race that actually benefits from it. Whereas Zerg and Protoss is actually counterproductive most of the time to use the F2 hotkey. Now he's harassing us with Liberators. We notice, okay, he's just massing Marine tank. He probably doesn't even have a fort base. He has a lot of units. So he is probably all-inning, which means we don't really need to drone up further. We just need to make sure that we take good fights here. We could theoretically even give up the space. I have a lair here, which means it has more HP, which is kind of nice at first. But if we would lose it, it would be pretty annoying. Now we catch a bunch of his Marine reinforcements, splitting off some Zerglings there into the mineral line. That was mostly because not all of them could attack, so it was inefficient to let all of them engage here. That was a bad engagement. I just wanted to check if he was there, but it was quite expensive to do so. Now we're trying to target fire down the E-base because that's the only thing that is exposed in this case, since he has army behind his main wall off. And on his third base he has a bunker which is impenetrable with Zerglings only. And yeah, now basically I just want to set him, I want to force him into an all-in and then defend on my own side with Queen Lingbane. That's something that is very, very common. It's a common strategy if you go Lingbane Queen against someone that is tank calling you. Because if you take fights, usually it's bad fights. Most of the time you will trade very poorly, and if he still has a decent economy, he can constantly keep making units. It can go wrong very quickly. Whereas if you kill all of his SCVs, you basically only have one army to deal with, and usually eventually over time you can deal with it while running away with your economy most of the time. So at this point I don't have 5 Banelings, which is what you need to break the wall. At this point I'm trying to get all of those tanks, because I saw they were unsieged. I wanted to get all of the tanks and then run away. So that's exactly what I'm doing now. Not sure why I'm talking like this, but it's actually kind of hard for me to watch and talk about everything at the same time, because I'm also trying to look for my own mistakes here. Oh, there was a double drop in my main base. He's actually going to kill my spawning pool, but I mean, at this point he's not mining anymore and he's not producing anything anymore because I have so many units inside his base. So he's actually still the one that is on a timer. We don't actually have to do anything yet. We can still run away, even though after this base we don't really have a full mining base anymore. He simply just isn't producing anything whatsoever, and we have a lot of full energy queens. We still have enough minerals to start extra bases, so that's exactly what we're doing here. While our opponent is already floating his production. Now, I mean, at this point I realized, okay, when I took a look at it, I have enough units, I can just go for it. GG was called and we won 2-0. And we advanced into the next round, where if you guys enjoyed this, I can make another video exactly the same way, where we faced off against MaxPax. So I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you can let me know in the comments below. And then I'll make another one with the semifinals where I played against MaxPax, as I said, so that's a best of 3 against Protoss. See you guys then, bye bye.